Is it okay to classify an entire group of people as mentally ill? It looks like DOJ is prospectively looking to do that in the wake of the Minneapolis Catholic school shooting. And what is that going to look like if it ever does manifest into reality? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That's right, we're hitting a bit of a sensitive topic as we are discussing the potential bans that DOJ is floating in the wake of the Minneapolis Catholic school shooting. To walk us through that today, I have brought on CRPA's president, that is Chuck Michel. Chuck, thanks for being on with us today.
Always a pleasure, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And guys, before we get into this, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. We've got the litigation fight going on. We've got the legislative fight going on. We're trying to grow the channel and get as many eyes on this as possible because those eyes do turn into advocacy. You can help us out just by clicking that like, share, or subscribe button. It really does help. So I would ask if you haven't done that already, please go ahead and do so. With that, Chuck, let's go ahead and jump right into this. This is from Newsweek. Jacob, if you could pull this up for me. It reads like this. Senior officials in President Donald Trump's administration have reportedly considered proposals to restrict transgender Americans from owning firearms. Justice Department officials have discussed restricting the sale of guns to transgender people in the wake of the Minneapolis Catholic school shooting after the suspect was said to be transgender, according to anonymous sources who spoke with CNN and the Washington Post. This, of course, was also proved further with the videos online and stuff that ended up coming out about this individual afterwards. The reports have sparked backlash online, with the Democratic congressional candidate in Illinois calling the potential move an overtly discriminatory civil rights violation. Senior Justice Department officials have held multiple meetings since the shooting to discuss a firearm ban for transgender Americans, according to two sources who spoke with the Washington Post. One source said the Justice Department Office of Legal Counsel and the Office of Attorney General were considering whether being transgender was a mental illness that could disqualify someone from possessing a firearm under the current firearm regulations. The reports were met with a fury from transgender activists, with many campaigns arguing that the move would be a violation of the Second Amendment, which is normally a bastion of conservative principles. So I guess, Chuck, before we get into kind of the broader questions of what is or what isn't, I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this. Let's say that the Department of Justice ultimately decided to go forward with this. How does something like this actually manifest itself into reality? I mean, is it something as simple as an additional question on the 4473? Is it something additional with background checks? How would something like this, like I said, if it were to go forward, how would it become reality?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Conceivably, they could put a question on the 4473 form, are you transgender? That's not going to last long because that's, you can't, the bottom line here is you can't just label a group and say all of them are mentally ill, and not just mentally ill to the extent that they are a danger to themselves or others. I mean, every transgender has, they're on a journey, they're on their personal journey. And, God bless them as they try and work their way through that stuff, but that doesn't mean they're dangerous. And it doesn't mean they're mentally ill to the point of being dangerous or at all. But the existing law allows mentally ill people who are a danger to themselves or others to be disarmed, but you have to be adjudicated. In other words, there has to be some kind of a judicial finding, or at least a doctor's finding, a psychiatrist's finding, that would then be admitted in court that says you are a danger to yourself or others. But you cannot just label a group. If we let them get away with that for transsexuals, then tomorrow somebody's going to say anybody who supports MAGA is mentally ill. And this has been used historically against Blacks, against Native American Indians, against certain religious groups, to disarm politically disfavored groups, to disempower politically disfavored groups so that they can't stand up for their own rights. And to one degree, this is sort of much ado about nothing, because there would have to be some kind of a major change in law to be able to say that, to somehow conclude that all transsexuals are, or transgenders are mentally ill. and then they don't have to be found to be a danger to themselves or others in order to be disarmed. That's a huge change, which every gun rights group would oppose, because today's is a double-edged sword. And first of all, there's no reason to disarm someone simply because they're transgender, but there's no reason if you give the government the power to use a label, they're going to use that. The next administration, the next Democratic president will use it to disarm, you know, Republicans or conservatives or CRPA members or whatever, uh, because they don't like us.
So it seems like what you're saying is really more so along the lines of, as a general practice of the Department of Justice, identifying a group at all we have seen be detrimental in the past, and just because it's a certain affiliation of this group today doesn't really change that fact. I guess the question remains, because it's hard to say that there isn't statistics that aren't overwhelming. And actually, Jacob, if you could pull this one up for me really quick. This is from the Williams Institute of UCLA School of Law. Just some brief numbers here. It says this: a new study from the Williams Institute at UCLA School of Law finds 81% of transgender adults in the U.S. Have thought about suicide, 42% of transgender adults have attempted it, and 56% have engaged in non-suicidal self-injury over their lifetimes. And, this is something that we always lean on when, again, a tragedy happens, like what happened with the Minneapolis Catholic school. The firearms community continues to come out and say mental health needs to be addressed. This is disproportionately high for mental health, but it seems like what you're saying is that the answer isn't necessarily the Department of Justice categorizing or labeling an entire group as mentally unfit. It has to be done on an individual basis. I guess, and I know this doesn't necessarily relate to firearms particularly, but culturally, how do we do that when the culture of America seems to have been going in a direction of propping these people up and enabling, this lifestyle? How does that actually change? Is that something that can be changed through government, or is that a cultural thing specifically?
Well, I'm not sure it has anything to do with transgenderism. It's mental health, and that's not limited. Mental health issues aren't certainly not limited to transgenders. We have a huge mental health problem in this country, and in that we have a failure to address it and treat it. We have a big problem with psychotropic or other types of drugs. I mean, steroids, hormones, whatever you may be taking, or antidepressives. What are the side effects of those? This gets into the whole, make America healthy again kind of a subject matter. What are we doing to really, we opened up the asylums. We let all those people out on the street. Now half of them are living on the street, homeless. A lot of the homeless people have mental health issues or drug addiction, which is maybe a mental health issue. So that's a much bigger question. What kind of resources are we going to put as a society put into detecting and treating folks with mental health problems, particularly those, not just ones who are dangerous, but particularly those ones, but the people who, they can't succeed in life because they're bipolar or they have anxiety disorder or whatever. They can't put a structure in place in their life to be successful and to be organized and thereby be successful. So that's all. I'm not a psychiatrist, so who knows what the guidebook of psychological conditions says, and how many there are that really need to be addressed. But it's bigger than just those who are. But although we probably want to focus, at least initially, on the indicators that would show that a certain person is dangerous because of mental health issues.
Yeah,
I don't know that the treatment that's being administered right now is really doing any good. I think there's a knee-jerk reaction to give them a pill, give them a pill. That's pretty much our whole medical system.
Yeah, and a lot of people would say that that is dependent on the companies who are creating these pills, and they've got their profits that they're trying to hit, and there are cogs in that machine. That's neither here nor there, though. What we're focusing on is the Second Amendment rights portion of this, and it seems like what you're saying is this would be part of a slippery slope that could end up turning on other groups of people, like you said, MAGA people or political affiliation or whatever.
This is what the Rahimi case was all about. Well, not all about, but this is one of the primary focuses of the Rahimi case. There was a guy who had been adjudicated to be dangerous as an individual. He went through the court system, and the question was, can he be disarmed? And the answer to that from the Supreme Court was yeah. And historically, that hasn't been unusual. They call them lunatics and idiots throughout history. And a lot of times when someone was deemed to be in one of those classes and found to be, not deemed to be, found to be in one of those classes, they could be disarmed. So, but the interesting thing about this, to be honest with you, looking at it from a different angle, is that now the liberal groups, the progressive folks, have to come out and support the Second Amendment for this subclass of their groups. And by the way, CRPA has worked with Pink Pistols, Operation Blazing Sword, individual transgenders folks over the years. We've worked together to defend Second Amendment rights. It's not like every single LGBTQ person is anti-gun or anti-Second Amendment. So we've worked together with them over the years, but now the groups that didn't want to support gun rights now have to, it's almost like they're stuck. They have to support the Second Amendment. They have to pay lip service to the Second Amendment in order to defend this group that they have tried to sort of claim as their own for political reasons.
Yeah, it's probably a lot easier to live in an ideologically consistent framework than it would be to live in one that isn't. So I feel you there. So I guess, Chuck, what are your final thoughts on this? I'm sure that in the form of regulations in general, we've seen stuff floated down from DOJ like this before. Are these things generally done swiftly, or are they drawn out for months and years? And I'm also curious, is this something that DOJ has the power to enact themselves? Would the legislature or any sort of executive order have to be involved? How do these things play out?
They could try and do some regulations that enhanced a statute, but not really. This is not just a policy that you can adopt. There's a significant change of law, or at least the interpretation of law. So no, but look, as far as where this is going to go, I don't think the Trump administration, the CRPA has come out against it. Second Amendment Foundation came out against it. NRA came out against it. Pretty much every pro-2A group in the country has come out against this proposal because they know, first of all, that not every one of these people is, just because you're transgender doesn't mean you're dangerous. And secondarily, they know that if this can be used against this group now, it can be used against us later.
And then what about timeline? I mean, does this stuff normally happen quickly, or is it drawn out?
No, nobody's going to be rushing this. I don't think. You never know with the Trump administration, but I don't think this is something, given the pushback that they've gotten from pro-gun rights groups, this is not going to, I think this is going to just kind of wither. That would be my prediction.
Well, we are going to follow along with it, and we surely will see sooner, hopefully rather than later, have an answer on what's going to happen with this. But Chuck, I do appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for being with us today.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like content like this and you want to see more, you want to see that Second Amendment ball continue to be pushed forward, please, one more time, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It's a great way for you to directly contribute to these efforts here in the state of California. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you on the next one.